Welcome to Nugget 106 with Steve Groman. Today we're going to talk about compromising. And I know that in some of the lessons you mention how we don't compromise with different evolutionary scientists. And in this nugget, we're going to talk about if you're willing to compromise Genesis with the evolutionary anthropologist.
Well, let's read the definition of anthropology. Anthropology is the science of human beings, the study of human beings and their ancestors through time, space, and in relation to physical character, environmental, social relations, and culture. Number 2 definition is theology dealing with origin, nature, and destiny of human beings. That sounds kind of important, isn't it?
Why would they use the word theology there?
Interesting, isn't it? Because they do have a religion. I think they know it.
Wow.
Then we have Paleoanthropology, which is a branch of anthropology dealing with fossil hominids.
I know one of the reasons that I thought this would be good for us to discuss is we often ask children, what do you want to be when you grow up? And a lot of them say anthropologist.
They really do.
And I don't know that they realize, or even their parents realize, that this is just saturated with evolution. The whole mindset, the whole conception of anthropology is evolutionary.
Absolutely, because, again, paleoanthropology is the study of origins and predecessors of the human species, including the fossil. They use the fossils and other remains. Well, there is no predecessor to the present human beings. And why would we let them tell us what the origin is? It's an interesting thing, but it does come up quite a lot.
We have already discussed this article. It's from Discover Magazine, June 2020. It was called Head Cases, and we went through this in detail in Nuggets 78 and 79, and you might want to go watch those. They're really interesting. One of the statements that they made there, I thought it's actually their byline. It's really, really interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is, because they say in the opening decades of the 21st century, new discoveries have refined and revised the story of human evolution at an unprecedented rate. And that's something I've talked about for all these years. I mean, they're constantly revising and refining. And of course, they'll use that as a good thing. Well, when we learn things, we correct our errors. Well, that's all great. What about all those textbooks that were wrong? What about all those people that were taught factually something that just wasn't right?
But they're still basing it on the same concept.
Absolutely.
That we have evolved. They're looking for these things, and I know we're going to come across that in a few minutes about how they're looking for things. This article went on to say, when it comes to understanding our lineage, the more we learn, the more paleoanthropologists want to find out. So that's interesting. They just keep digging, don't they?
Well, they do. And I've discussed this for years, all these years, all these 27 years. I talk about these things. The textbooks, for instance, this Raven Johnson, they say humankind's closest living relatives are the African apes, chimpanzees, and gorillas, like this mountain gorilla from Rwanda. And it's amazing because they're not how we evolved. They're not our closest living relatives at all. But they've been presenting this way forever.
Recently, in Scientific American, May 2020, they had this ad, and it had a picture of Professor Donald C. Johanson. He is an honorary director of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and he is a paleoanthropologist, and he is famous for finding the supposed Lucy. In this ad, his quote is, "Let's reinvent a reverence for our real creator, nature." So this is the mindset of one of the major anthropologists. And here's a copy of his book. You want to tell us a little bit about Lucy?
It's only a little 3-foot tall skeleton. She has a different hip than what most monkeys do or any apes of her time. And they come up with these variations of fossils and portions of fossils, and then they go and claim that they were some kind of an evolutionary transition to who we are. But Lucy's been shown to be just a normal ape creature of some sort. She is not a human transitional fossil of any kind transitioning into human beings. But it has been discussed and presented for many, many years.
I recommend Darwin's Legacy. It is by far one of the best lessons in the series. And we go into detail about the people that have been influenced by Darwin. And one of those men was Ernst Haeckel. And this states he was a flamboyant figure. Well, that's one way to describe him, and we won't go into him at this point in time. But what was interesting is he was trying to find evidence for Darwin's idea of human evolution. At that time, no remains of human ancestors had yet been identified. And then he said he instructed his students, such as Richard and Oscar Hertwig, to go out and find it.
Find the evidence.
We don't have any, so we better go find some.
Well, and that's why a lot of times when they do find something, because they find some kind of skeleton that may show evidence of a different hip or a different foot or a different knee or something, that has nothing to do with whether it is some kind of a transition into our lineage. One of the students did find some. A Dutchman named Eugene Du Bois he searched in the East Indies, and he discovered the remains of Java Man back in 1891, consisting of a skull cap, a thigh bone, and a few teeth.
Here's a picture of those items. But we go into detail of all these monkey men, their relevance and validity in that video, and that's not a part of this, but we're just trying to show that they needed evidence, and voila, in a few years, they come up with
They
some.
discovered it. Yeah, they found what they needed. The Bible does say, Genesis 1:26, God says, let us make man in our image after our likeness. Mankind's made in the image and likeness of God. It has nothing to do with anything else.
One of the things that we like to point out is if we are made in God's image, did God have all these other pre-humans and then voila, he sticks a soul in one of us and now we're in his image? No, he said in the original creation that he created man in his image. There wasn't a time frame of evolutionary hominids.
You just can't compromise with any of these people. In this case, we're talking about compromising with evolutionary anthropologists. When they have an idea, they have a system that was developed to come up with an alternative of God. We would never want to take some of their ideas and just say God did that.
And that's what we've tried to point out in this nugget.
Exactly.
All right, well, thank you.